Hey, this is James Devine with the Almost Everything I've Learned About Teaching Band podcast. Today, I want to give you some discipline techniques. There's no single discipline technique that's going to work all the time with every child, with every student. You're going to have to get to know what your students are like but the more tools you have in your tool belt, the better that you can do. It's important to get to know your students as individuals, and it's important that you have a lot of grace and forgiveness, especially if you're working with middle schoolers. So one of the techniques I've used is assigning my own lunch detention. Now you might think, I don't have time for that. I don't want to give up my lunch. I've only had to give up a handful of lunches in 20 plus years of doing this. First of all, keep it simple. So these are for simple infractions, not for major things like fighting or a student cussing you out, but just where a student does something stupid and maybe you gave them a warning or maybe you moved them to a different seat already and the minor lack of behaviors continues going on. Make these lunch detentions short. I usually aim for 3 to 5 minutes max. And the students bring their lunch and they sit down and they're not allowed to talk or be on a device or anything like that. If they say they forgot to come to lunch detention, it just doubles. So if I assign them 3 minutes and they forgot, the next day it's going to be 6 minutes. And then if they keep forgetting, then it's going to escalate to something a little bit longer. Make sure you follow the law. In Colorado, there's a certain minimum amount of time that students are required to have a lunch. And none of the schools I've taught at have ever been close to that minimum. They've always been 10 or 15 minutes early. So if you are taking a few minutes away from a student's lunch, you're usually not in violation, but double check on that. And you need to have good admin support for this. So I've had some admin who weren't as supportive and they said, well, you can't take students away from their lunch. And so then I had to go back to other discipline techniques. But most of my admin, when they realized I was the one giving up part of my lunch, they were very supportive of me doing that. Is it effective? I'll just tell you this. I've almost never had to give a second lunch detention after giving the third one of 3 minutes. So literally what happens is I'll have to do this 3 to 5 times at the start of the school year, and then maybe 1 or 2 times second semester after the long Christmas break. And then the students really get the message that Mr. Devine really means this. So for me, it has been a very effective technique. Let's talk about concert week. So during concert week, a lot of time, all directors go over, here's the expected behaviors I have for you when you're sitting in the audience, especially if you have several groups and you have one on stage and one's in the seating and one's getting ready to come on stage. And there's always a temptation for students to talk, to be on their devices, whatever it might be. So what I usually do, I try to get the students on stage a couple of days before our concert. And we literally walk through, and if we have time, we play through the entire performance. If we don't have time to play the whole thing, we'll just play either one song or the starts and ends of the songs. And so I actually walk them back to where they're supposed to sit afterwards. And then we talk about what it means to be a proper audience member, to be listening to the other groups and not whispering. I tell them I have them at a higher standard than the rest of the audience. So even if the adults behind them are whispering, they're not allowed to. And we practice getting off stage and getting to those seats. And what I tell them is that I know that you're smart and intelligent and you're going to get this in the 3 to 5 minutes that we're practicing this. If for some reason you don't and you forget on concert day and you talk or you have a device out, then that tells me you need more practice in how to be a proper audience member. If that happens, we'll spend part of your lunchtime. So going back to that lunch detention thing again, we'll spend part of your lunchtime practicing how to be an audience member. Once again, in 20 years of using this technique, I only had to hold back one group of 5 students one time, and they came and practiced with me in the auditorium how to be proper audience members. They were extremely bored. I had my computer and I was getting work done, but I never had that problem again. Going back to what we talked about last week, move around the room. This is very important to maintain good classroom discipline because proximity is going to help students to manage their behaviors a little bit better. If you ever notice, the flutes usually are the most well-behaved students, and the percussionists are usually the most disruptive students. It's because of that proximity thing. The flutes are usually really close to the director, and the drummers are way in the back with these loud instruments with sticks that they can bang on them. So if you move around the room, you eliminate that from happening. This is just a handful of discipline techniques that might help you. I would like to coach you one-on-one. And if you would like a free coaching call, give me a call or send me a text at 719-238-4193.